Welcome to Freethought Matters. I'm Dan Barker. I'm co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which produces this weekly program. FFRF, with more than 33,000 members, is the nation's largest association of freethinkers. That means atheists and agnostics. We are a state church watchdog that works to keep religion out of government, just like our founders intended. We also inform the public about the views and lives of freethinkers around the world. Today, I'm happy to have with me a musician who has a powerful story to tell. Greydon Square is a West Coast hip-hop performer. He's a writer, an MC, a producer, a sound engineer from Compton, California, originally. To escape the gang culture in Compton that he was a part of, he became a U.S. Army soldier, served in the Iraq War. Greydon Square is also an outspoken atheist. His albums include The Compton Effect, the CPT Theorem, the Kardashev Scale, Serpents of Eden, the Mushroom Cloud Effect, the Mandelbrot Set, and Omniverse. Greydon Square is one of the artists featured on Low Technology's LTGU album. His latest album is Compton Scattering. His lyrics deal with religion, with politics, and with social justice. So thank you for joining me today, Greydon.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being on your show.
I don't think we've ever met personally, have we? Have we ever...
No, but we've traveled in some of the same circles. I think we've been at a couple of the same events and cross paths, but I don't think we've ever been formally introduced, no.
Well, we love your music, and we played some of your tunes. Do you call them tunes, hip-hop songs or tunes? Or?
You can call them tunes, you can call them records, you can call them tracks, you can call them cuts, you can call them joints. We don't even care. As long as you're respectful, we don't care.
We've played some of your joints on our Freethought radio show from time to time. So before we talk about your life and your work, let's just take a little peek at one of your productions. I think this is called Summertime's Ending.
Summer's Ending.
Summer's Ending.
Yeah. It's kind of cold. Yeah. 1, 2. Yeah. Look, I'm the creepy guy in the trench coat following you. The homeless guy on the side of the freeway bothering you. I tried to signal, but you didn't pay me no mind. Now I call like a bill collector till you pay me on time. I've got the skill to describe your morphogenetic field, and yet and still go back to the math for a better thrill. We took all of our collective forces and unified it. You read the Bible, and that isn't even pseudoscience. You think I'm afraid of Islam like I'm shook nervous? I'll torture Quran with my lyrics. A book burning. These blacks accept the religion of the slave master, but they wouldn't accept it if you were a gay rapper. Why is it when we want to move forward, we face backwards? Our community's sick, religion the main factor. You have such a problem with gays and transsexuals. What if I told you that we were trans-intellectuals?
What if I told you that we were trans-intellectuals? What does that mean? You're a trans-intellectual?
Yeah, it's a term that I cooked up around that time in between the two albums that I was working on, the Kardashev Scale and the Mandelbrot Set, which you were kind enough to mention in your intro. And essentially what a trans-intellectual is, there's a little bit of framing that is required in order to understand that. So in the 60s, there was a Russian astrophysicist named Nikolai Kardashev. And he proposed this scale, this measuring scale for civilizations that we would detect throughout the cosmos. And it was known as the Kardashev Scale. So I became fascinated with this idea, right? Like where we were on the scale, we were 0.7 on the scale or 0.6, and how far we had to go to get to type 1, which made us a global civilization, or how far we had to go to get to type 2, which made us a stellar civilization, and type 3, a cosmic civilization, and all that kind of stuff. And so my fascination with this had me cook up this ideology that talked about becoming an active participant in the upward mobility of humanity on that scale. So people who are a part of that active engagement of trying to shift humanity and push humanity up that scale towards type 1, I classified those as trans-intellectuals, which I don't believe that I was the first of. I just believe that I was the first to kind of give it a name. Carl Sagan and Richard Feynman and Michio Kaku, I believe these people are along that train of thought. Now, whether they would call themselves that, it's a term that I made up, so it's not like a term that they're aware of. But it is something that I do designate myself as because the grand unified community, the community that I represent, we are essentially actively a part of, or trying to be actively a part of, moving humanity up this scale with our creativity and our intellect. That's what we're trying to do.
Well, and your work is certainly doing that. And what a juxtaposition. Your lyrics are about science and about philosophy and about social justice, and yet the images in the background. In fact, I know a lot of those scenes from that clip that we just looked at in Los Angeles. Here's supposedly a guy on the street that you would stereotype as being kind of, lacking intellect, and here you are
crazy.
With these,
yeah, he's either crazy, he's mentally disturbed. A lot of people would say that he belongs in some type of psychiatric facility or something like that, or she, right? And it's almost about recognizing the throwaway intellect or throwaway geniuses that society has to offer. Sure, this person has psychological issues and he may be on the street, but there's genius in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And I believe there's genius in all of us to be recognized in that way.
So you have quite a story. Your life started off right near there where you filmed that in Compton, California. You were bounced from foster home to foster home, and what's the line you use? You were not raised.
I wasn't raised. I was watched.
You were
yeah.
You were watched. You got involved in the gang culture, which must have been your only option at the time.
Yeah, I think because of my orphanhood, the fact that I was being bounced from group home to group home, I basically washed out of foster homes when I was like 9 or 10. I became a little bit too much of a troublemaker to be in even a pseudo type home, and so group homes and different size facilities in the Department of Children and Family Services system became my home. And so everyone that I would go to, obviously, because I was dealing with a lot of psychological issues of being an orphan, just as a kid, not understanding what was going on in my life, I would act out and I would run away and I would end up on the streets, and I would end up on the streets around some of the same people who were a part of that same lifestyle, until the point where I found myself being absorbed into that lifestyle, and I started getting in trouble, started getting arrested,
Yeah.
And for a lot of people in that area, not just Compton, but South Central, Watts, Inglewood, Gardena, Long Beach, there's a lot of kids out there who are essentially throwaway kids, and I was one of them from that era of crack and gangs.
Well, and then you did time on a weapons charge in prison, and usually we hear these stories about people who have jailhouse conversions, but with you it was the other way around. You didn't go to Christianity. You ended up eventually, you went into the army, right, and spent time in Iraq.
Yeah, well, let me clarify something. I actually didn't go to prison. This was when I was 17 years old. I went to juvenile hall and to camp, and there is a fundamental difference in that. I don't want anybody hitting me up like, hey man, that dude wasn't in prison. Like no one's claiming that.
Yeah.
However, yeah, I did, get in trouble. I was hanging around with the wrong people. We were all in a car together, and when we got pulled over, no one wanted to say anything, and so we all kind of caught that rap. And it was a situation where the way that I grew up had informed my decision making at that time. So I didn't really think that there was anything wrong with what I was doing, because I felt like I was already being groomed for that lifestyle, just growing up in foster care anyway. But as far as my deconversion, I always tell people I still was a believer during this time. I still believed that there was a creator and that there was a God, all the way up until I had came back from Iraq. And to me, I had experienced things there that had shown me, or had at least made me question the notion of a creator anyway. But a lot of it came to scaling. I had questions that were bigger than religion could answer. And so when I was in the military, I would have conversations with people who were religious, and I was religious, but I was asking these questions that they couldn't answer, their pastors couldn't answer, their youth pastor leader couldn't answer. And it's not that I wanted answers, I just wanted a better dialogue. And the dialogue I felt like I was getting wasn't intellectually stimulating enough. And I felt that when I tried to go from this religion to that religion and find the answers or the stimulating dialogue there, it wasn't there either. So it made me really start questioning if religion had the questions or the answers to the questions I had to begin with.
So we have to take a break here, but before we do, let's look at a little bit of your tune, your track, your joint.
Your joint, yeah.
Myth is the title of it. In 20 seconds, what is this about here?
So Myth is a song that I wrote that kind of deconstructs the idea of fable and lore informing our societal development, right? What holds us back as a society. And while I don't put all the blame on religion, I think there's some other things as well. This is specifically about how religion had informed this societal's direction and how we are not as far along as we could have been because of it.
So let's look at Myth.
Intuition is not adequate to the task. One point I'd like to make about this is that every human culture has a set of creation myths, but they're in the realm of mythology or religion or folklore, and they are, of course, all mutually inconsistent. The great thing that happens, every human culture has a set of creation myths. Has a set of creation myths. Every human culture has a set of creation myths.
Yeah.
Has a set of creation myths.
This is costless rap. Jews hear my music and run out the room like Holocaust is back. Europeans say that block can rap. Canadians say he off the map. How can you argue with that? Well, you can if you have your own agenda and been spoon-fed religion from the placenta. Call yourself a Christian, Muslim, I know you do. Any religion, bet it's the one your parents chose for you. And any admission of your doubts to someone close to you will not be accepted. Cause forgiveness goes out the window when it's someone different. And I don't know what's worse, the fact that I'll never believe or that I miss that community from church. There's two ways to control a population, hope and fear. Prove the existence of a soul and we'll go from there. Otherwise, shut your mouth before you open it up to mention me, Greydon Square. Yeah.
Every human culture has a set of creation myths.
Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu, Christian.
Has a set of creation myths.
Hi, I'm Ron Reagan, an unabashed atheist, and I'm alarmed by the intrusions of religion into our secular government. That's why I'm asking you to support the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest and most effective association of atheists and agnostics, working to keep state and church separate, just like our founding fathers intended. Please support the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Ron Reagan, lifelong atheist, not afraid of burning in hell.
My name's Katie, and I'm an out-of-the-closet freethinker. I decided to shed religion because of its self-destructive tendencies. I witnessed firsthand the toll religion can take on your psyche as a Christian woman. I grew up judging people, proselytizing, and ridiculing them because their beliefs didn't coincide with mine. And let me tell you, if someone were to question my faith, I would not have any of it. It wasn't until I was working at a Christian camp that I met an atheist, and he taught me to think critically and view the world through a different lens. It was at this moment that I decided that I may never have been a believer. A sense of fear and community were really the only things holding me to my faith. As a proud woman and humanitarian, I would like to be the best version of myself, not the worst.
Thank you for watching Freethought Matters. You can find more content by the Freedom from Religion Foundation at our website, ffrf.org. Follow FFRF on Facebook, and you'll get notifications about all of our content, including whenever we go live on FFRF's Ask an Atheist. FFRF is also on YouTube, where all of our programs, including this show and our weekly news bites, are available to watch anytime. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you on the web.
And welcome back to Freethought Matters. I'm Dan Barker. We're continuing our conversation with the rapper, the trans-intellectual songwriter, Greydon Square. And Greydon, we just saw part of your video there about myth, and you now call yourself an atheist after having gone through all of that. I'd like to ask you, like I like ask any kind of an artist, if you don't believe in a God or a transcendent world, then where do you get your inspiration? Where do your ideas come from?
Wow, that's a fascinating question, number one, because I don't necessarily think that even within the secular atheist materialistic community that there is a consensus on this. But me personally, I've wrestled with the idea of inspiration and creativity being received from some I don't know, higher order energy. And I don't mean that in a supernatural way, but I think that creativity is its own energy, right? And the creatives tend to play in this world that we swim in these oceans trying to find the best way to express this. And I feel like when you're in the right state, you're not really driving the vehicle of creativity so much as you're kind of trying to ride the rapids of creativity. And so that's where I think a lot of my creativity comes from, is this, because I read so many stories, I read so many books, I'm watching so many different things, I create my own stories, I'm always trying to find ways to play with different tropes. And, I host a podcast called the Gray and Gold Podcast. Cheap shout out, I know, cheap plug. But the reason why I bring that up is because my partner on there, RK Gold, is an author, and we spend a lot of time talking about story tropes and ways that story influences not only ourselves, our personalities, but society in itself. And I think that there's a higher order of influence that story plays in reality. There's no way this is not a scientific conversation. This is more of a philosophical conversation.
I know what you mean, because I write songs too. It's not like there's anything transcending the universe, but sometimes your mind has this illusion of, and it seems to me that your lyrics come from the real world. You're interested in this world. I saw you were on Jeremiah Kamara's documentary, Contradiction. Dealing with social justice issues, and you're very much concerned about social justice and social equality and racial justice and all of that. And is that one of your major sources for, if I can borrow the word, inspiration?
It is. And I try to tackle issues that I find that a lot of people aren't trying to tackle, or things that are hard to discuss. Specifically, religiosity in the Black community. I'm really confrontational about our dependency on religion in the Black community. But there are other issues in the Black demographic that I feel like should be addressed that aren't being talked about. The family, the family situation, whether it's absentee fatherism or single motherhood or whatever it is that may be. And a part of what I talk about when it comes to racial justice and social justice and any type of justice is really understanding things from the perspective of society and nature, right? I don't argue from a place of fair, because I don't know what that means, right? It's all relative. My version of fair may not be your version of fair, but I always try to stay in the realm of practical. Okay, what's practical that could help you, that can help me, that can help both of our communities, or whether it's different communities or whatever, that can help all of our communities, that we can all have a hand in, right? Yeah. I don't believe in super radical extreme measures. I'm not a defund the police kind of person. I'm much more of a let's hold the people accountable when they make mistakes, because they should be held to a higher standard. But I don't try to drive off the cliff when it comes to the solutions that are available, because I feel like once you do that, you lose a lot of people and then the dialogue stops. So to me, it's like, let's keep the dialogue going so that maybe, me and the opposition side may have the ability to come to some sort of a consensus. So, whether it's race, whether it's class, whether it's religion, I always try to make sure that I keep the dialogue going. I think, a part of that.
Which is to say that you don't have to believe in a God or a higher power to care about real human values. Isn't it true that some of the founders of Black Lives Matter are atheists or non-believers as well? I think that's true.
They may be. It's you know, I don't consider myself a Black Lives Matters person, but I am aware that there are some secular influences and that there are, you know, some atheists within that community. It'd be surprised if it wasn't, because it's primarily liberal and progressive sort of movement. So that's where a lot of atheists and secular people like to hang out. So I wouldn't be surprised if they were in pretty, you know, decent numbers in that community.
I think a lot of people are surprised, though. I mean, there's this stereotype that the African American community is deeply religious, and they're surprised to find some of them, you know, Mandisa Thomas and Sikivu Hutchinson, and all through history, blacks and African Americans all over the world who don't believe in a God, who are still working to make this world a better place. People like you.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think that because there aren't as many of us as, you know, our religious counterpart, yeah, it's probably going to be that way until there's more of us kind of in the forefront and being credited with some of this stuff. Like, it took a long time for, even in the atheist community, for me to get any like real credit for what I was doing as a Black atheist, as a person who was within the Black community, comes from that experience that everybody talks about that needs to be addressed. And yet, even within the quote unquote atheist community or secular community, I was pretty much largely ignored. And so it comes to a point where I feel like, yeah, there are a lot of Black secular and atheist opinions and personalities out there. But I don't think that the conversation should begin and end with religion. I think there's a lot of issues that, along with religion, are very uncomfortable and very powerful that we need to start unpacking as a community.
Well, I can say amen, brother, to that. There's so many issues. Your song, Stockholm Syndrome, talks about how I think, you can tell me, how the oppressed people sometimes embrace the master, which is what that's all about. Can you set up, we'll show a little bit of Stockholm Syndrome and maybe just explain what this is about.
Yeah, so Stockholm Syndrome obviously comes from this idea that you can fall in love with your captor or your oppressor, right? This idea that you have the ability to ignore some of the oppressive and, you know, just totalitarian methods of the ideology that you profess love to. And to me, it goes back just really to the fundamental nature of what God is, what the nature of God is. And that's why I always tell people to define what they want that God is. But that's what Stockholm Syndrome seeks to address as a song. It's the idea that, you know, you can be oppressed by something and fall in love with the very thing that oppressed you and defend that.
Let's watch part of Stockholm Syndrome.
Holy books inspire hate, despair, and drama. If your God does love you, I hope you make him wear a condom. People think with prayer they're safe in the streets. Frederick Douglass didn't become free till he prayed with his feet. You can tell the hell in God are man-made. They both want to question authority and demand slaves. And any incarnation of slavery's not good. So from here we can deduce Stockholm Syndrome is not hood. But it gets deeper than this, especially when people get pissed. When you point out their deity's nature and even intent. But I'll never worship anything with evil in it, especially something who allows evil to even exist. I don't give a if he created me. That don't give him the right to commit genocide with pride and act crazily. His abused and neglected claim is crooked biz. If this was Cali, DCFS would've came and took his kids. science. Belief is so important that if you don't, you go to hell. Without the type of proof you need in court to avoid a jail. Give me the gas can and send me. I don't need the draws, all because I can't fathom how your God doesn't need a cause.
What this looks like imprisonment.
Yeah.
What's worse is that the prisoners don't know that they're prisoners.
Yeah.
Even defend the tactics that are used to imprison them.
You're a conquered mind, trying to conquer other minds, selling.
I hear all about you, but this looks like imprisonment.
Yeah.
What's worse is that the prisoners don't know that they're prisoners. Even defend the tactics that are used to imprison them.
Another conquered mind, trying to conquer other minds, please.
Come and hear our truth.
Religious freedom is an oxymoron. None of them books scare me. Not the Bible, not the Quran. This is the Islam, and it's...
Wow, that is powerful stuff. How can people see that? We only have about 60 seconds. Do you have a YouTube channel?
Absolutely. They can find me on YouTube if they search Greydon, Greydon, and the squares in the shape. You know, you can search Grand Unified, the music group. We have a Discord. I have, you know, a pretty nice size digital community and following. So I'm not hard to find. If you type in atheist rap in Google, I'm pretty sure I'm one of the first people that comes up.
So you're surviving the pandemic okay? As in part of the gig economy?
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, I had already made my hay with music early in my career. I think I'm still living off of the Compton Effect and the Kardashev Scale and Mandelbrot Set. So I wasn't directly affected by the kind of shutdown, but I will say that there were a number of people who I knew who were directly affected by it, and that's what affected me, was the people who were affected by it.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Greydon, for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to finally get to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching Freethought Matters, because free thought matters.
Hi, I'm Steve Pinker. In my book, Enlightenment Now, I show that the world has become a better place as reason has been overcoming superstition and tribalism. But the values of the Enlightenment are under attack. That's why I'm a proud member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, the nation's largest association of free thinkers working to keep state and church separate. Please join me in supporting the Freedom from Religion Foundation to ensure that our government is driven not by religion, but by reason.